Let's get salty!
Hey everyone, Zeddy here again today with a brand new video, and the free decks for new and returning players have all been updated with the upcoming launch of Murderer Castle Nathria. Each class has a brand new deck list that can be redeemed by any player who is returning to the game after being away for 120 days. Doesn't matter if you've claimed a free deck before, you can now get them every 120 days. You don't play Hearthstone, or if you just happen to be checking out Hearthstone for the very first time, you get one free deck to choose from, and we're going to go over all 10 of them to give you an idea of which ones are the best or which ones you would like to check out, because a lot of these are actually very competitive decks. They will not contain any cards for Murder at Castle Nathria. However, they contain cards up until Sunken City, including like Colossal Legendaries, hero cards, and some really good stuff. We'll go over it class by class. And again, if you haven't played Hearthstone in 120 days or you're a brand new player, check these out. They actually look really good. Starting off with Demon Hunter, we have Abyssal Assault. Basically an aggro deck for Demon Hunter. You have your early game in here, like your Metamorphins in Battlefield, but basically really solid deck. This can definitely win you games. It's aggressive. It's got really strong cards like Multi-Strike, but it has like the core Demon Hunter cards. If you like Demon Hunter, this deck is phenomenal because you get Zelag of the Abyss, the Colossal Legendary, incredibly good card. You get Kurtrus Demon Render, an amazing hero card, and you also get the legendary card Lady Athena, which is an incredible finisher, or just, well, a great way to take the board back. This deck overall, really solid. And Fellgorger, which is an epic, is also thrown in there. If you want to play Demon Hunter, incredibly good deck, and you even get Amalgam of Deep as well, which slots into like any tribal deck for any class. Really solid deck to pick up. It's also relatively easy to play. It can win games quickly. Definitely one of the decks I will recommend the highest. Druid gets Vandar's Reinforcements. It's like a big Druid based around Vandar, which is a free legendary already. The legendary cards that are in here that are not free are Raid Boss Onyxia and Wildheart Guff. Ysera and Alex are part of the core set. You also get Kazakhstan, which can slot into other decks, but lately these days, mostly Druid. There's a couple of epics in here and spammy Arcanist, but overall, this deck looks to try and scam, get a Vandar out quickly, draw cards, cheat out big minions. This deck does not look very competitive to me. It looks a little too all in on the big package, but if you're a Druid player, you do get the core card of Guff, but I would say you're probably gonna have a pretty rough time winning against aggressive decks or other greedy decks. It's just a little bit too slow, a little bit too clunky, but overall, if you're looking to get Guff, which is an absolutely insane card, it's not the worst thing in the world to go for. Hunter deck, Beasts of the Deep, is like a big hunter which has a good early game shell. This is very similar to what's top tier on ladder, at least before Murder at Castle Nathria goes live, and it has quite a few legendaries in here. But basically, you curve out with your early game. You have a couple one drops. One thing that's really good is your Vicious Slither Spear into Doggy Biscuit, into your Ramming Mount. It's just really hard to kill stuff, but the shell of the deck is basically built around Harpoon Gun. It's a weapon where you attack, you dredge, which looks at the bottom 3 cards of your deck. If it's a beast, it gets -3 mana, and when you dredge, you put to the top of your deck. So you're trying to hit like a Hydrolodon, which is a Colossal Legendary, which comes with a deck, a Mountain Bear, a King Crush, cheat it out, it can do good stuff. You also get Beaststalker's Tavish, which is another hero card, legendary card, really good inclusion, can go into multiple hunter decks as well. You get Ambassador Phelan, which I believe is a free legendary already, but regardless, this deck is very competitive, and you get some really sick legendaries. You do already get King Crush for free in the core set, but overall, this is another really, really strong free deck. Like, you can legit hit legend with this deck, at least in the current meta, if you were to start today. Mage gets a deck that's kind of fallen out of favor in the meta, but it has seen pretty powerful abilities, which is like a big spell mage, mech mage. It's all built around your early game mech package. One of the best cards being Mecha Shark, which deals a ridiculous amount of damage when coupled with Seafloor Gateway and a bunch of other mechs. This is another deck that includes the epic of Amalgam of the Deep. You also get the legendary of Belinda Stonehearth and Gaia the Tectonic, a legendary colossal minion. Belinda allows you to cheat out Dragfire Amulets, your only spell in the deck. This deck has performed relatively well across all ranks. Do well with it. There's just not a lot of utility with a lot of these cards outside of the mech deck, unless you're looking at Amalgam, which can be used wherever, and Belinda can go into regular big spell mage. But overall, definitely a good deck, probably just a bit more niche compared to some of these other ones. And speaking of mechs, we have Mech Paladin, Popping Bubbles. This deck is really good. This is a very, very competitive deck, at least in the current meta, that can win games. You just play your early game mechs. If you hit it with a Prismatic Jewel, you're buffing things once Divine Shield leaves. Again, another Amalgam of the DP. See how good this card is? It's in multiple decks, and it definitely should be. Radar Detector is another epic, though, that allows you just to basically draw up to 5 mechs for 2 mana. It's absurd. Another epic in here in Stonehearth Vindicator, which draws your Radar Protector, but most importantly, these 2 cards here, the Leviathan, which is a legendary colossal minion, and Lightforged Cariel, which is a legendary hero card, are basically auto-include in every Paladin deck until I don't know when. For a very long time, they are so ridiculously good. If you want to play Paladin, this deck is amazing for you just because you get these 2 cards. They go into everything and they're both legendary. So I highly recommend this deck if it looks good to you and you enjoy playing Paladin. Priest gets a very good deck as well. How Illuminating. This deck is doing very well in ladder. It's built around Serpent Wig, which is recently buffed. You also get the legendary of Priestess of Valish, which can go into multiple priest decks. It refreshes your mana for every spell you've cast. And again, you'll note another Amalgam deep. It's like in every deck. It's so freaking good. But yes, it's all about playing your Nagas, getting your wigs back, buffing it up with Bless, and it's just a really solid deck. This is a free legendary in the core set. Dust-wise, this is probably the cheapest to build on your own. The only other notable exception for an epic is Shadow Word Devourer, but I will note this next expansion, Murder Castle Nathria, is giving this deck a ton of support, and a lot of these cards are going to slot into there because the buff stuff they got coming up is incredibly good. So if you're looking for a good priest deck, this one's pretty solid. Just dust-wise, it doesn't really seem to match up with a lot of the other classes. Rogue gets another deck that's missing a really core card, unfortunately, but other than that is a deck that has been doing pretty well on ladder. Jackpot, where basically it's built around Jackpot, adding 2 random 5-cost spells from other classes to your hand, or 5 costs or more, and cheating it out with the Swift Scale Trickster. You get a legendary here in Queen Ajara, as well as Shadow Crafter Scabs, the hero card. Used to be 7, now it's 8. Tess is a free legendary, and you also get Maester of the Masquerade, turns your hero into another class, which lets you cheat out your Knolls, which is also a legendary. The only big omission from this deck that is like auto-include in every rogue deck is Krakatoa, which is the rogue legendary colossal. But other than that, this deck is very good, but with the omission of Krakatoa, it's really hard for me to recommend this over some of the other decks that have the colossal plus hero card and all that. But if you love rogue, this deck's certainly competitive. You're probably just going to want to scrounge up some dust or open Krakatoa up in a pack. Shaman is a Murloc base. You have Murloc Overload. Murloc Shaman is a very good deck, certainly legend capable. Again, Amalgam the Deep, is that like in every one of these decks? But yes, you just spam a lot of Murlocs and you have a lot of good early Murloc game. They recently got Clownfish that allows you to cheat out your Murlocs. Do insane turns. You have legendaries in here like Cookie the Cook, very solid, also goes into Control Shaman, solid card there. And the other legendary being Brucana the Elements, the hero card, which again slots into basically every Shaman deck period. However, you are kind of like pinned into this, I gotta play Murloc strategy. So if you like Murlocs and you like quick games, this deck's very effective. And the other legendary as well, Firemancer Flurgle is in there too. So good value, good deck. It's just pretty one-dimensional outside Brucon, and your Wildpaw Cavern goes into basically every single Shaman deck as well. Warlock also goes Murlocs with Murglock. They got a bunch of Murloc cards in Sunken City, but has basically gotten 0 support in Castle Nathria. So this deck has basically hit its peak. I would say it's not super competitive. It hasn't performed particularly well. You do get Sir Finley in here, which is a really good legendary that could go into other decks. Again, Amalgam of the Deep, as well as Gigafin, which is an incredible card. If you're looking at playing wild, Gigafin's pretty darn sweet there. You also get Chum Bucket, which is an epic, but again, only usable in Murloc decks. I would definitely stay away from this deck. It's not very competitive. It's not getting more support, and it just isn't very Warlock. And the cards just don't have a ton of utility unless you're playing other Murloc decks. The only really solid cards in here are Gigafin, Amalgam, and Finley for the most part. I would probably just hard pass on this one entirely. And lastly, we have Pirate Warrior. Raid the Docks, built around the Warrior questline. this is a great deck for new players because it's only good at low ranks, but it's very easy to play. You play a bunch of pirates until you get your quest reward. You have a couple legendaries in here like Nelly the Great Thresher, which was recently nerfed, and quite a lot. It is not a very good card anymore. And Mr. Smite, which is a good card still, but this deck just does not hold up anymore. It's another one I basically have to hard pass on unless you're just looking for a very easy deck to learn to play Hearthstone. But honestly, the aggro Demon Hunter I showed the first deck is probably a better way to go in that regard. Again, Amalgam the Deep is in here, but overall, this deck is just lacking in power level and even dust-wise, probably not worth your time. So there you go, kind of a breakdown of all 10 decks for new and returning players. Hopefully that helps you out, and we'll catch you next expansion when they'll be updating these lists yet again. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. Have a great day, and stay salty, my friends.